Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. Hope everybody's doing all right. Uh, it's early. Yeah. Normally, I would be streaming an hour from now, but I've got some stuff that I'm going to have to do very, very early in the morning, and I've actually got to drive when I get off stream about 45 minutes south. So, yeah, gotta try to get my self in a bit of order here. I don't know what I'm doing. I guess I'm just like randomly changing everything and moving stuff around. But okie dokie. So hope everybody's doing all right. Evo, good to see you. Hope the dissertation is going well. Feel free to lurk as always. Late Bloomer, what's up? Good to see you. Vipers, what's up? You made a Dolly mini image for tonight's stream, and it's in stream chat. Okay. Not even sure what I'm getting myself into, but let's go take a look. Goths wearing high visibility jackets. That's excellent. Yeah. Awesome. Let me see if this is working. Oh no, my images are all goofed up. Of course they are. That's what I get for changing things. I move stuff around and I do stuff and it's like, no, I don't like you doing that. Why are you doing that? Okay, now it's all good. Okay. Alright. Looking okay. Doing okay. Nope, a little bit more. A little bit. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Alright, now we're on track. Hey, everybody. So yeah, my name is Shane. I'm a history and sociology teacher in college. And on the show, we talk about history stuff, but we don't do it in like a boring way, or at least I don't think we do it in a boring way. We try to have fun with it. We try to goof off and tell bad jokes and make horrible puns and end up veering off into some weird esoteric nerd slash geek slash niche discussion thing that like 4 people on Earth know about, but they're very passionate about. I'm coming to you all hot off of a banning. I got a banned in a chat earlier today. I did get unbanned. It's like a mod banned me, and then the streamer unbanned me. So yeah, I am clearly a little feisty today, even though what I said was completely logical and backed by citing sources and completely succinct and salient to the larger point being made. But apparently that makes me a racist. So, alas, labels given, right? Anyway, but yeah, tonight we're going to talk about the Visigoths. I don't see any Invisigoths, but I guess that's the point. Yeah, that's the point. They're hiding. Yeah, I am an hour early. I've got to drive after I get off stream tonight about an hour south because I'm going deep sea fishing tomorrow. And we have to leave at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I don't want to like stream until 9:45 and then have to like drive an hour after that. So just special. Yeah. We'll see. I'm going to reserve my excitement. Part of me thinks it's going to be really fun, and the other part of me thinks that it's going to not be fun at all. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so yeah, I don't necessarily want to spend a too terribly large amount of time just kind of beating around the bush. We'll just kind of go right at the material here and kind of get ourselves kicked off. So, of course, what we are talking about here is the establishment of a notable, sizable Visigothic kingdom in what used to be the Roman provinces of Spain. Of course, the Romans called this Hispania and Lusitania and a whole bunch of other different particular terms. but we know this today as the modern day countries of Spain and Portugal. If we turn our borders on, we can see Spain and Portugal. Of course, not to be rude to the Andorrans, there's also the very, very small country of Andorra that's here on the border that would have been part of the kingdom of the Visigoths at one time. So we won't forget you, Andorra. I know a lot of people do when they're listing countries, but I know where you are. Anyway, yeah, and not Andorrians. People from Andorra. I don't think that they're the same. Now, they could be if they had advanced technology and they were hiding in plain sight, but I don't think that's the case. But I'm not sure. So, who were the Visigoths? Well, they were part of the reason that the Western Roman Empire fell. Of course, they're a big tribe of people that came from Central Asia and moved into first Eastern Europe and then into Central Europe and then into Western Europe, where, of course, they settled down here in Spain. And at the beginning of our stream tonight, they do have quite a bit of land. And we see here that there's a big old chunk of it, and their capital is the modern-day French city of Toulouse. And this was a pretty important city, religiously speaking. There was an important series of church officials there, and of course the population was fairly high. Star Trek is dead. Long live the Orville. I haven't seen any episodes of the Orville, but just to be honest, I haven't seen any of the newer Star Trek series either. The animated one I know is out there. There's the newest one that has the guy from Hell on Wheels as the captain. I haven't seen any of that. And the newest one that's on, I guess it's at Paramount Plus. I can't remember what the title of it is, but the one that has the lady captain, I haven't seen any of that either. And also haven't watched Picard. Part of me wants to go back through The Next Generation before I watch Picard, mostly because I think my wife would appreciate The Next Generation, and she's never seen it. So it would be worthwhile for me to give that a bit of a rewatch. But it is a very hefty investment of time. That's a very long series with a lot of episodes, and of course they're hour long. So there we go. You've been watching Strange New Worlds and the Orville back to back for the past few weeks, and the writing is vastly superior on the Orville. Don't watch Picard. It's awful. See, I've heard multiple other people say the opposite, that it's actually quite good, and that it revisits a lot of the ideas that showed up in The Next Generation that were potentially kind of not necessarily what we would call... Let me switch back over here. We're looking at Spain. There's a lot of stuff that they revisit that would have been controversial back in like the 90s when it was coming out, but has now been sort of like old hatted in, and they give a little bit of a new take on some of the stuff. I don't know. Get on with it. Yeah, okay. So let's get on with it. What's up with the Visigoths? Well, they've got a big kingdom, and they're doing pretty well. Unfortunately, there are some bad guys in the way. We can see here that they've got this kingdom right here, who is a group of barbarians called the Sueves. And I just had to sneeze really, really badly, so I turned the microphone off. And thank goodness it actually cut off this time. So we have the Suebic kingdom right here. Up here to the north, you can't completely see all of it, but this is the kingdom of the Franks. And then we have the Burgundians right here, who are another barbarian group that we've mentioned before. And these are all going to be sort of in the same atmosphere as the Visigoths, and the guy that is going to sort of be our first decent leader for the night is this guy named Alaric II. So this guy seems to be a pretty good ruler. Here he is. This is a signet ring with his portrait on it. The guy seems to be a pretty decent ruler for a few reasons, and he rules for quite some time. He rules from 484 to 507. He's going to do quite a few things that is designed at stabilizing his particular kingdom and making it last. All of these, what we call barbarian kingdoms, remember, are sort of a thin veneer of ruling barbarians on top of what was largely a Christianized, Romanized population. And that's inherently unstable because, you've got maybe 20% of the population ruling the 80% of the population, and they're not culturally the same, they're not ethnically the same, and importantly, they're not religiously the same, because the Visigoths were a particular branch of Christianity called Arians that had heretical beliefs about the nature of Jesus. They believed that he was a created being instead of a godly being, or cohabitated or co-synonymous with God. And we could get into Christological heresy if you want to, but I warn you, it's a deep, deep rabbit hole. But this is something that had been banned all the way back at the Council of Nicaea, and it had managed to fall in with the barbarians. So you have a ruling group of Gothic-speaking Arian Christian Visigoths that were ruling a predominantly country of Latin-speaking, what we might call Roman Catholic Christians. So it's not the same. There's a lot of tensions going on here. Based on where the border ends with the South Coast, you guess there's no Visigothic Film Festival. I don't think Cannes is in their realm. It might be something that they visited but not controlled. They're pretty proud of that part of France that they own, though. For a little while, their title is the Kingdom of Hispania and Septimania, which is that sort of little curve of France right about here, this little chunk. And they're pretty happy about holding on to that. So the rule of Alaric is, you hate that lisp? I'm not sure exactly what lisp we're talking about. Fight me? I don't know why I'm fighting you. I don't know what we're fighting over either. What's going on? We have accelerated very rapidly here. The Spanish from Spain. Oh, where they say the S's as like THs almost. Yeah. Like gracias. Yeah. I'm with you now. I understand what you're saying. It took me a second to catch on there, but I'm with you. Okay, so what's up with Alaric II? So, okay, he's going to take over, and one of the things that he does to sort of make it very clear who's in charge here is that he writes two separate law codes. There's a law code for the ruling Goths, and there is a different law code for the Romans. And you might understand here that this was done to create very clear class distinctions. This did not go over very well, and there are a lot of people in the sort of Roman side of things who felt like this was too harsh, and there's especially a lot of land confiscation and redistribution of wealth, moving from the local Roman nobility many times to the Gothic nobility. That, of course, is going to cause lots of tension. And despite all of this, Alaric is able to hold on to control, and he actually has a very stable rule. Unfortunately for the Romans, the reason that they were conquered in the first place is because, well, they didn't have a lot of resources that were left from the old Roman Empire. Of course, they didn't have an army that was big enough to push the Goths out. They certainly didn't have the sort of centralized cohesion that the Goths had. It just wasn't going to be good for them. So, Alaric gets involved in a lot of other stuff. And of course, during this period of time, there are lots of other barbarian kings doing a whole bunch of stuff going on. One of the things that is going to happen around this time is the Ostrogoths, who are based over here, are going to be moving over to take over the actual peninsula of Italy. And the guy doing that is this guy. We've mentioned him many times on the stream. His name is Theodoric. Theodoric the Amal, who was successfully going to set up an Ostrogothic kingdom that was basically all of Italy and a big chunk of the Balkan Peninsula. And at one point, Theodoric actually gets kind of stuck with his army behind some bad guy lines, and Alaric is going to make a bit of a play and invade Italy to help Theodoric out. And this is going to create a pretty positive experience between these two. They're going to sort of become not necessarily best and tight friends, but they're going to have a mutual respect for each other. And this, of course, is going to always go back to the fact that both of these groups are essentially Goths, right? They might be Goths from different regions, but they're capable of speaking the same Gothic language. They have a lot of the same cultural backgrounds. And while Theodoric was probably the more powerful of the two, he definitely does appreciate having an ally in Alaric over in Spain. So much so that Alaric is going to end up marrying Theodoric's daughter. So it sort of seals the friendship here between the two Gothic kingdoms. This is going to pose trouble for the other barbarian kingdoms in the area, because here we have two sort of very powerful kings that are now allied together, and they're going to be able to present a unified front, which is scary if you are people like the Burgundians or the Franks. So what's going to end up happening is that the others are going to sort of look at the Visigoths as potential bargaining chips. How can we get them on our side, or how can we keep them from going over to the side of our enemies? And this is going to bring into play this guy who we talked about last week. This is, of course, Clovis, the king of the Franks, who is going to be responsible for setting up the first big Frankish kingdom. This is him getting baptized. We talked about that last week on stream. Clovis is initially going to be very friendly with Alaric, and he's going to extend some overtures of peace and alliance, and the Visigoths do end up helping the Franks against the Burgundians, who had sort of set themselves up right here in a small kingdom. And this is going to go pretty well for both Franks and Alaric, because they're both going to be able to take land. But Clovis is not particularly over fond of having these two Gothic guys like right at his back door, capable of delivering a pretty powerful 1-2 punch, right? You don't ever want to be the potential target of two enemies, especially when you're sitting, here in France, and you've got an enemy on this side that's big, that's allied with an enemy on this side that's big. You don't want to be in the middle of the two potential bad guys. So Clovis is going to make a peace treaty with Alaric in 502, and it only lasts for about 5 years before Clovis decides that it's time to betray Alaric and invade the Visigothic kingdom. And this goes really badly. Now, Alaric is going to be able to mount a defense, and they're going to go out and they're going to have some pretty vicious battles. But in 507, Alaric is actually going to be killed in battle against the Franks. And this is going to open up, especially the southern portion of France, which was at the time being held by the Visigoths, to invasion. And the Franks are going to move in. They're going to sack Toulouse, which was the Visigothic capital, and they're going to take almost all of this southern French region away from them. Now, the Visigoths are able again to hold on to this kind of little region right around here, but all of this other territory that they had in France is going to be transferred to Clovis. You don't expect the guys that you're allied with to stab you in the back and take all of your land. Now, you might be wondering where Theodoric was in all of this. Like, why didn't Theodoric ride out to to help his treaty partner with Alaric. And there's a little bit of chicanery going on here, if that's a good word for it. Basically, Theodoric knew that the Franks were really powerful, and he sort of apparently figured that if they beat up on each other, they would be weaker, and that would be better for his position. Also, Theodoric was really interested in trying to convince the Byzantine emperors that he was being a good guy, and he was doing a lot of this stuff to try to reestablish trade, and he really wasn't interested in expending a whole ton of energy to go and beat up the Franks on behalf of Alaric. And there's a reason for that, because remember, Alaric is married to Theodoric's daughter, and at this point they had a son. So this was Prince Amalric, and maybe if Alaric dies, my grandkid can be king of the Visigoths, and he's a little kid, so he'll clearly need a regent. So maybe that's me. And so Theodoric is playing a little bit of like three-dimensional chess here, going, if he dies, he dies. Didn't like that guy anyway. And that's actually what happens. But there is a hitch in the get-up, if you are aware of that particular phrase. If not, ride more horses and wagons, right? There's a guy named Gezalik. You go, who the devil is Gezalik? Well, Gezalik was Alaric's illegitimate child, and he wasn't supposed to be in line for the throne because, again, illegitimate child. But here's the thing about it. He was of age. He was an adult. And the way that the Visigothic power structure was organized is that the king position was usually passed down hereditarily, but the king had to be elected by the nobles, right? So when it's time to pick the new Visigothic king, because Alaric got whacked in battle, Gezalik is like, hey, I'm old enough to rule right now. You don't have to wait for some kid. Also, if you let that kid in, Theodoric's going to try to run the country. And the Visigothic nobles were like, we choose you. So the illegitimate kid becomes the king. This doesn't go very well. He takes over in 507. He only rules until 511, so he rules about 4 years. And the reason it even takes him that long is because Theodoric is, again, got a lot of plates spinning, and he has to try to play all of his little cards the right way. But in 511, Theodoric is going to invade the Visigothic kingdom. Now, this is kind of Goth attacking Goth here, right? And you go like, why are we doing that? We're cut from the same Goth. Why are you attacking me, right? It was pure politics. That's what it was. So Gezalik is in trouble, and he gets run out of the capital, and he escapes, and he goes down to Africa. At this time, Africa and these islands here in the Mediterranean were under the control of a group of barbarians called the Vandals. Those Vandals like vandalism, right? So Gezalik is like, look, I need you all to help me get back on the throne. And if I get back on the throne, we can be really good buddies. And look, if you have this side of the Straits of Magellan and I have that side of the Straits of Magellan, we can cut off trade to the other side of Europe, and we can be super duper rich if we ally with each other. And, well, what's up, KP? There's some logic to this, but here's the thing. The Vandals are not necessarily super excited about supporting this guy. They have troubles of their own. The Vandals were also Aryans. Northern Africa at that point was an incredibly Christian area. Very, very, very Christianized. And they were having a lot of trouble with their own internal issues. Their first king had ruled until he was very, very old, and when he died, it caused a little bit of consternation. There's a lot of potential for expansion on their part, and if they want to expand, do they use their army to expand, or do they use their army to put some illegitimate guy back on the throne and incur the wrath of Theodoric? Because remember, Theodoric has got the big kingdom in the area. He's kind of like at the top of the hill, right? So the Vandals are like, look, here's what we're going to do. You can stay here, and if you can get volunteers that have ships and soldiers and arms and stuff, we will let you collect kind of volunteers, but we're not going to give you the like official Vandal army, right? So Gazalik ends up putting together this kind of ragtag marine group and actually does invade Spain. Are the Vandals savage? Yeah, eternally so. They're just always that way, right? See what I did there? Are they super smart, immortal Neanderthals? No, they're not super smart, immortal Neanderthals. Vandal Savage being a Neanderthal was such a poor idea. Anyway, this is deep cut DC bad guy stuff. Well, I don't know. I guess Vandal Savage fought Batman. You might know who Vandal Savage is. If you watch that really bad show, or any of those shows that started off okay on CW and then went really crazy, you'll probably know who Vandal Savage is, because I think he shows up as a bad guy in some of those. Anyway, so the Vandals let him take a couple people. They end up invading Spain. Theodoric, at the moment, has basically taken over the Visigothic kingdom. Now, he's put his grandson, Amalric, on the throne, and Theodoric is sort of ruling as the regent, but like even the taxes are being paid to Theodoric at this point. So there's a fairly decent sized battle, and Geslick escapes, and he's still running around kind of free again, and manages to make his way over to the Burgundians. He eventually gets caught and executed. So the threat of the former king showing back up eliminated. Amalric, this young child who's at this point probably like 10 or so, is going to be the king, but his grandfather, Theodoric, is now effectively ruling a kingdom that is a big portion of the Balkan Peninsula, Italy, and if you really kind of want to see where the power is, he's also got control of a big portion of what is today Spain. He's also one of the main villains of Young Justice. I haven't seen Young Justice. I am somewhat skeptical of DC animated television shows. They've never been able to get back to the height that was Batman the Animated Series. I know that Teen Titans was good at points. I think Teen Titans went a little bit uneven. So it caught its footing like season 2 or 3, and then kind of lost its footing almost immediately after that. But Young Justice gets close. Wow, that's pretty big. Teen Titans is way worse than Young Justice. Oh, okay. Well, I might have to evaluate whether or not I watch that. I don't really have time to watch that right now. I need to be working on so many other things that I'm not getting done because I'm constantly doing other stuff like going to Heroes Con and having to be on jury duty. I've got jury duty next week. That's going to be a blast. We'll just say it that way. I don't know if I'm chosen for the jury yet. I have to go see if I've been chosen. We'll see how that ends up going. So anyway, Amalric is king. And he's not really in charge. For 15 years, Theodoric is effectively king in the kingdom of the Visigoths. And the only thing that really stops it is that he dies. And so he dies in 526. And at that point, Amalric gets to rule by himself. But there's a bit of a wrinkle. When Theodoric dies, everybody sort of sees this as the moment of opportunity, right? The guy that had been sort of the gravimetric center of the barbarian kingdoms is going to die, and there's now a big vacuum of power, and everybody's just going to kind of go crazy. And the biggest winners in this particular moment are going to be the Franks, almost said Gauls, the Franks to begin with, and then the Byzantines. But we'll get to that in just a second. What's up with the Franks? Well, as soon as Amalric has to rule by himself, he runs square into a very big Frankish invasion. And it's not good. They beat the mess out of him. And he was not particularly well liked anyway, because he had been a puppet for 15 years. And while he had been a puppet, Theodoric had been running things very effectively and using his really big army to get stuff done. And now that the Visigothic kingdom and the Ostrogothic kingdom are broken up again, they're not so cozy with each other. And so Amalric has got a problem of dealing with the Franks that had been kept at bay because the Visigoths and Ostrogoths had been unified for a long time. And the Franks at this point are smart enough to understand that the weaker of the two is the Visigoths, so when they invade, they beat the mess out of them. And Amalric is like really shamed by these big defeats. So much so that when he gets back to Barcelona, he gets assassinated by his own men. The king is dead, long live me. Yeah, right? Not actually very long. Not actually very long. Theodoric dies in 526, and Amalric only lives another 4.5, 5 years. Because in 531, after a particularly devastating defeat by the Franks, Amalric is marching back to Barcelona, or to annoy late bloomer, I might say Barcelona, and then he gets stabbed to death by his own people. Perhaps even his own bodyguard. Let's get down to business to defeat ourselves. That's kind of the way that a lot of this stuff goes, unfortunately. So Amalric in 531 is assassinated. Boop. And you're like, okay, well, who's going to be king now? That's a great question. And the answer is this guy named Teudas. Yep. Teudas. Such a, I don't know, that the way that name sounds just kind of like wiggles its way into my brain in a bad way. Teudas. It's not a pleasant sounding name. But anyway, who is this guy? Well, he was an Ostrogoth. The Udis. He's got the Udis. Is that like the itis? After you eat a big meal, you get the itis, but he's got the Udis. If so, that's a bad thing to have. You don't want the Udist. I'll take the rapist. Oh, not Alan Connery. Sean Connery. I don't know why I said Alan Connery. I don't even know where I was going with Alan. Anyway. So who is Teudas? He's an Ostrogoth. He was a military leader that was really powerful in the Visigothic kingdom under Theodoric. So he's kind of a holdover from Ostrogothic power. And you go, well, how does an Ostrogoth who's not from the royal family end up on the throne of the Visigothic kingdom? And that's a great question. And the answer is money. He has a crap ton of it. He had managed to work into the system and get a lot of bonuses, and he had managed to build a rather large chunk of land that was his, and from that, of course, he was going to make a lot of money, and he had hired basically his own private army. So when it came time to name a new Visigothic king, he sort of marches his big army up, and he's like, "Hi, I'd like to be nominated king." And they're like, "You and what army?" And he's like, "I'm glad you mentioned that one." And they're like, "Oh, crap." He also got blessing from Theodoric because, again, this guy had sort of been in the larger Theodoric network. And for a little while, before Theodoric had died, this guy had actually been kind of a tributary, like an official noble under Theodoric. So he's got approval with some of the rich families that were still in Ostrogothic Italy. He's got a big army that's in Visigothic Spain. He's got connections all over the place. And this guy is going to be the new king. The answer is murder. A little bit of murder. Not a lot of bit of murder, but a little bit of murder. He does kill a whole bunch of people. Well, not a whole bunch of people. He kills several prominent people that had spoken out against him being king. So when he becomes king, he rules from 531 to 548. Something interesting is happening. And that interesting thing that is happening is in the form of a guy named Justinian, who was the emperor of the Byzantine Romans. Sort of the other half of Rome that still survived. He had just made this big peace with Khusrau in 532. And Khusrau, by the way, was the king of Persia at the time. And Justinian was looking at reuniting the Roman world. And the first place that he started was down here in Africa against the Vandals. Now, there had been a bit of a proposed connection, if you will, between the Vandals and the Visigoths, if you remember that from just a moment ago. And the Vandals are going to look to the Visigoths and they say, "Look, you really need to help us with these Byzantines. Because if you don't help us, they're coming for you next." And Teudas is like, "No, they're not. No, there's no way. There's no way. Because, look, they'd have to take here. They'd have to first kill you. Then they'd have to take, like, all of the Ostrogoth stuff. And there's no way they're going to take all the Ostrogoth stuff. And then when they got over here, they'd be so exhausted. There's just no way they're coming over here." I roll. Spoiler alert. Rome shows up. Anyway, but that's a little bit later. So they make a show of supporting the Vandals. But what they actually do is tell the Vandals, "Look, we've got your back. If Rome shows up and they do a whole bunch of stuff, we're going to show up and we're going to help you out." So the Vandals kind of count on Visigothic aid, and then when the Byzantines show up, they just don't come help the Vandals. In fact, what they do is wait until the Byzantines clobber the Vandals to the point that the Vandal kingdom collapses, and then the Visigoths attack into northern Africa to try to take the land themselves. Unfortunately for Teudas, this doesn't go very well because the Romans are very convinced that they should hang on to this stuff. The fight for northern Africa against the Vandals was very difficult, and they had to invest a lot of money and manpower to do it, and they were going to hold it once they took it. Justinian was rather insistent upon this, and so much so that he had sent his best and bravest general, this guy named Belisarius, to go conquer the Vandals. So here come the Visigoths hoping to pick clean the bones of the Vandal kingdom, and they run square into the Romans, who quickly shoo them away. And Teudas is a little bit crestfallen that he doesn't get the spoils of war. Other than that, he does seem to be a fairly effective ruler. He manages to keep the borders intact. He doesn't have a lot of issue with the locals. And what's particularly notable, if you read the historians here, there are a few of this period of time. The biggest one that talks a lot about the Visigoths is this guy named Isidore of Seville. So if you want to look up Isidore, he's your primary source historian from here. You also get Jordanes, who talks about them because Jordanes is writing a history of the Goths at large. You also get a little bit of Gregory of Tours, who was the French historian at this time, because of course the Visigoths and the Franks are going to have a lot of dealings with each other. If you want to go look up all these primary sources, please do. They're good stuff. You might get a kick out of them. So anyway, Tudas seemed to be pretty okay with the fact that most of his population wasn't Aryan. Now, that had not been the case in previous kings, right? They're pretty proudly Aryan Christians. Tudas seemed to recognize that there was a lot of tension there between the everyday population that would be some random farmer somewhere in Spain and his ruling Visigoth, kind of upper crust of nobility. So he's praised by a lot of these church historians for allowing the Catholic Church inside of Spain to operate freely. This might not be to the level that it actually was. It could be that he didn't actively persecute them and they were like, holy crap, this guy's amazing. He didn't necessarily go out of his way to make life heck for them. So, maybe he was just not really interested and they took that as amazing. Because, when you're used to being disallowed from doing things and killed, being treated with dispassion is kind of a bonus sometimes, right? He's not actively killing all of us. This is a great guy. But it does appear that he allowed for several church councils to happen inside of Spain during this period of time, which is a pretty big deal. But he was still very much an Arian. Now, his death is an interesting one. So, the story goes like this. He is having court one day, and court, of course, is where you show up and you're in public and people come up and bring grievances to you and you make judgments and you pass judgment and you render justice and all of this stuff. And someone, we don't even get this guy's name, but some man who apparently had a beef with Tudas sort of managed to fake his way into the line with a weapon, specifically with a dagger. And he was, some of the sources say like he was kind of pretending to be either lame or kind of like off, which, whatever, is affecting enough actor to get him in the line and get him close enough. But when he approached the throne to, present his petition to the king, instead he just stabbed him to death. And historians don't really know what to do with this because apparently in Tudas's final discussion or kind of his like death speech, he tells everybody not to punish that guy. He's like, don't go kill that dude. He got me fair and square. So some historians have considered this to be something like a long-lasting blood feud that was between Tudas and this other person. And this other person basically got him fair and square because they had been trying to kill each other for a while. Other people suggest that this was just somebody from the Visigothic side that was tired of having Ostrogothic people rule. Other people say that it was just some random dude and there wasn't necessarily a good reasoning for it. Maybe he actually was a crazy person that just decided, I'm going to wake up and go stab the king. So one way or the other, Teudas assassinated literally on the throne. Unfortunately for him. Now, when Teudas dies, things are going to go a bit sideways. And we're going to have a couple of kings here that are not kings for very long. So one of the first guys, this guy named Tudigasel, and we're not even going to really worry about typing his name because it's ridiculously hard to pronounce. But he was king for like 2 years or so, and he was assassinated pretty quick because apparently one of the things that he did was find married women who he would drag into public and pay them like they were a prostitute and have sex with them in public as a way to sort of assert his dominance over certain noble houses. So he didn't last very long. He got assassinated pretty quick. And if you're keeping up, none of our particularly notable kings have died of natural causes. Alaric got killed in battle. Guzelik got killed after a show trial, so he was executed. Amalric got assassinated by his own people. Teudas gets assassinated on the throne, and Tudigasel ends up getting assassinated by a crowd of people. Sounds like a great way to spend your free time, Kelly. It sounds pretty horrible, just to be honest. But hey, Kelly, good to see you. I hope you're doing well, my friend. It's been a while since we've caught up. I keep saying, hey, we should catch up, and then I never do anything to keep that. But we should. Hope you're doing well, then. So, the guy that's king after him is this guy named Agila, who doesn't last very long either. When Tudigasel gets killed, there's this giant war that starts up, and Agila is on one side of the civil war, and there's this other guy named Atenagild who is on the other side of the civil war. I guess I could put these people's names up. There was a lack of snark in the comment feed. I'm glad that you were here to fill in as Snark Monitor. I hope everybody's having a good one. I know that some people are just lurking, and that's perfectly fine too. But as always, if you want to throw something out there or have a question or anything like that, I'd be happy to answer. Anyway, so these two guys are going to both claim the throne. And Agila is going to be the king first, and then Atenagild is going to rebel against him. And so we've got Spain already in bad shape, and now they're plunging themselves into a civil war. And in the midst of this, one of them does the bad boo-boo, right? If you're in a civil war and you're trying to one-up the other guy, you can always reach out and ask for help. Now, both sides had asked for help from the Franks. Both sides had asked for help from other groups. But one of these guys calls in Rome, sends word to Justinian, and then Rome shows up with a big ol' army. Because remember, Justinian is already trying to reconquer the world anyway. And by that point, he had taken northern Africa. He was fighting pretty heavily here in the Ostrogothic kingdom, which was already in shambles, and most of the territory here in the Balkans had already fallen, and a large portion of Italy had already fallen to Justinian. So with the Ostrogoths pretty much on the ropes or gone, the Visigoth sides just decided, why not call Rome? You don't call Rome because when Rome shows up, they don't play and they take their stuff and they hold it. So now we have a three-way battle going on inside Spain. You have Aguila on one side, and you have Atenagild on the other side, and then you have this big Roman army that's running around beating up whomever. And at the end of the day, Aguila is going to get caught in a big battle against Rome, and he gets killed in battle. Three-way halt. Usually you pay double for that kind of action, Cotton. That's an inside joke that refers to an earlier inside joke that wasn't really an inside joke that KP made in the chat. Nah, you're good. It's okay. Automod is, for some reason, really strict. I guess I have Automod on Puritan grandmother level because it doesn't let anything through. Don't worry about it. You're fine. So Aguila gets killed in battle, and now we have Atenagild, who is king, and he takes over officially as sole ruler in 554. Now, he's got a big problem, and that big problem is Rome's in his house. And Atenagild spends the vast majority of his reign trying to push the Romans out. And he doesn't really get a lot of success on this. Now, we don't have good information on a lot of these things. We know that they fought all over the place. Rome, of course, in Constantinople is going to claim that they have all of this territory. Archaeology doesn't necessarily back them all up on that. They might have fought a battle around this city, but them controlling that city is a different story. So we really don't know exactly where the border was, but it is fair to say that a large portion of this southern and coastal portion of Spain during the reign of Atenagild was probably under control of the Romans. And especially this southern portion here and this little region right here were almost certainly under the control. Now, how far they got up into the central territory, we don't really know because, again, it gets kind of fuzzy. But he doesn't stop fighting. Atenagild keeps up the fight, continues to try to establish his territory and push the Romans out, and he starts trying to make friends because the previous kings had reached out to the Franks and said, hey, come help us against the Romans, and the Franks are like, not so much. So Atenagild is in an interesting situation because he doesn't have any sons. He only had daughters, and he has two of them. One of them is the very famous Brunhilde, who we mentioned last week when we were talking about the Franks. But both of his daughters are going to be exchanged with the Frankish kings in an attempt at forging some sort of don't kill us friendship between the Franks and the Visigoths. At this point, if you weren't here with us last week, the Frankish kingdom was not a single kingdom. It was split up under three different sons of the last king who had previously died, a guy named Clothar. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. You can watch the VOD from last week if you want to catch up with the Franks. What is interesting about Atenagild is it seems like he was well respected enough by the local people. And we know that he was more respected, at least by some people, because, wait for it, he dies of old age. He dies of old age. Which is kind of rare if you're a Visigothic king. If you haven't figured that out already, considering we've had like 3 assassinations and 2 die in battle. So, dies of old age. Now, he does not have sons. So, there's a little bit of a rigmarole as to who's going to take over. But there are people in the royal family, and they pick this guy named Liuva. And I can show you what he looks like. Well, I can kind of show you what he looks like. This is not the world's best photo. Let's remember that people in the medieval period did not really have the world's best artistic skills, but this is King Liuva. Looks like a pretty decent guy, I would guess. It's kind of a bad scan of what is probably a fairly grainy picture just in reality, so it's hard finding some of these people, by the way. If you try to go find photos of old kings of Visigoth, Spain, it's kind of hard to figure out. Anyway, now Liuva was kind of a young guy and kind of understood that he wasn't in the world's best position. The Franks were getting very powerful. They had sort of begun to re-centralize, and a couple of years into his reign, Liuva does something kind of weird. And he appoints his brother, whose name is Liuvagild, to be co-king. Now, this is a weird move, right? I'm gonna let my younger brother control part of the kingdom. Now,
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Nix, thank you so much for that sub. 6 months. Man. Nixlotl, I appreciate you. Including for things like this. Nix, I hope the move is going okay. I know that you said you were going to be driving to Texas. I don't know if that meant you drove anywhere near me. I don't know from where you were coming into to what part of Texas you were going to. But I hope that things are going well with the move. And I hope that your cell signal is strong and you have many bars. Or whatever percentage of your little phone thing is. I don't know. Like my cell phone doesn't have bars. It has this little... you can't really tell. This little triangle thing up there in the corner. So, I guess it is what it is, right? Anyway, in case you were wondering, by the way, the art on my phone is of Nova, one of my favorite Marvel characters. And this particular piece of art was Nova Stan. I don't know. Anyway, that particular piece of art was drawn and colored by my wife. You went through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and now Louisiana. Well, if you went through Mississippi, I would bet that you were on probably I-20. And you went through Meridian and Jackson and Vicksburg. I would bet. That's about an hour from me. You probably took I-59. Well, I don't know. It depends on where they were coming through. So if they're coming from Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi, that's probably 20. They just went straight across 20. If they're headed towards like North Texas. 59 would have been like you were coming in to go into South Texas, like Houston. Oh, you did. There we go. So, one way or the other. You are not the world's furthest from me. Anyway, so, Liuva appoints his brother, Liuvagild, as co-king. This is kind of a weird thing, and we don't really know why. There's not a lot of good description as to the mental process of what was going on in this particular discussion. But Liuva dies about 3 years into his reign. So he starts ruling in 568, and he dies in 571. We don't really know why. He was young. Of course, everybody's like, he got assassinated. Did he get assassinated? Yeah, we don't know. But he's dead. And Leovigild is going to be king by himself. And here he is. You're also not driving. That's a fair shake, right? Yeah, I do not. Don't twitch and drive. It's probably a bad move. Everybody knows that history is boring and will put you to sleep, and if you're driving, that's even worse, right? So, Leovigild, what does he do? Well, he's actually pretty successful. He rules for quite some time. He rules for another good 15-ish years. And he's going to have a lot of success. Specifically, he's going to make a lot of success up here in this northern corner. Now, for those of you that know geography and ethnography and linguistics, you'll know that the sort of northern portion right in here of Spain has always been somewhat geographically and culturally isolated. If you know anything about the Basque language, it's Basque. It's from this region here in northern Spain. And that area had always been difficult to hold on to because of the mix of population to holding the region, to geographical issues, to logistic issues. Anyway, this region right here had been outside of Visigothic control for quite some time, and the sort of northern corner right here had been under the control of the Swabians for, at this point, about 100 years or so, a little bit less. And Leovigild is going to say it's time to get rid of these guys, and he's going to have a lot of success in sort of conquering this northern corner up here. This is going to be pretty good. He's going to end up bringing an end to the Slavic kingdom in that region, and then, in what is probably a less gutsy move than it really sounds, he decides to kind of take it to the Romans and start pushing against the Romans down here in the south. Now, that's not as bad of a decision as you might think. Rome was having a lot of trouble around this time. It had been devastated by a plague. There was a big war going on with the Persians, so Rome was not focusing a lot on holding on to the sort of southern part of Spain, and Leovigild was taking advantage of this opportunity to expand his own kingdom.
Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained?
Is this not why you are here?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Steve Conley and friends to the chat. I had the pleasure of meeting Steve in person last weekend at Heroes Con, and it was a great time. And in fact, if I take a sip of my water here, I can show you that this stream is brought to you by My Prancing Pony, which has been Jabberwock free since 1082. If you are familiar with Steve Conley's webcomic, The Middle Age, you'll know that My Prancing Pony is an N there. While I'm at it, let me... And by the way, Steve is LOLing because I specifically told him that I was going to do literally exactly that. What's up, Dave? For those of you that don't know about the Middle Age, Steve works on a comic called The Middle Age, and I was excited to be able to pick up the hardcovers of Volume 1 and Volume 2 at Heroes Con. These are printed in some really great hardcover books. I really enjoy the texture here and the feel. The art is reproduced beautifully. You can see here that the colors came through very nicely in the printing. So you should go check out Steve's channel here on Twitch, and also go hang out on Steve's page and read The Middle Age. And you can buy these in his store. And Volume 3 is supposed to be coming out in not too terribly long. A little bit from now, but not too terribly long. Steve's pretty great, except when he misses the deadlines. Steve didn't get the memo about the scary godmother. Oh, it's due today. Oh. Oh. And the colors weren't. Ooh. This is why we can't have nice things. Alas. Alas. Also, go follow David Peterson, who is another person that I got to meet. Well, not I mean, I've known David for a long time, and I've seen him in person for many times, but I got to see him at Heroes for the first time since the last time I saw him in person, which was at the last Heroes in 2019. David's a good friend, and he's a good guy, and I really got to... do it noon. Ooh. Alas. Why did they change that so suddenly? That's crazy. Also, David, I'm glad to hear the report on Julia. Please pass along both well wishes and appreciation of that. You're texting the books designer now and holding his clothes hostage. Alas, indeed. So, hey everybody that's coming in from Steve's channel. My name is Shane. If you were watching Steve's channel earlier in the channel's program, I was actually in Steve's room hanging out and chatting. I teach college, specifically history and sociology, and on my channel we talk history. And we kind of focus on the stuff that, I mean, some of the stuff is, you know, what you might have learned in class or learned in the school system, but history, especially world history, is a big thing, and there's a lot of stuff going on that all fits together if you kind of know the kind of the guts of it. And it's a little bit imposing sometimes because you start looking and you're like, oh, it talks about this guy, and I don't know who that guy is, and then there's this place, I don't even know anything about that place, and that's okay. You can just come hang out in my chat. And what we do here is we talk about history, but it's in a way that there's no tests. You don't have to do attendance. You can be in your pajamas. You can make horrible puns in the chat. Those are actually expected and appreciated. We went off on a 2 or 3 minute tangent earlier about Star Trek being better or worse or comparable to the Orville. So I mean, we're good people here. As a testament to how good the people here are, in the 2+ years that I've been streaming now, I have never had to ban anybody from this chat. And we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff. We've talked about religion. We've talked about modern things that are very, very politically charged. We're a okay group of people around here. I'm probably the worst of the lot. If you can deal with me, we'll be okay. Worries over a possible third quarter raise in paper, ink, etc. You're not wearing pajamas tonight. David, you are in the sanctity and comfort of your own home, and you can wear whatever you want, including nothing. But you wouldn't say I'm a good people. We did think about banning that guy, but we didn't actually ban that guy. He left on his own volition. And just to be fair, he wasn't even doing anything that was, well, yeah, he did step across the line one time, but after that one time, ways were parted, and we did not have to go back. So, there we go. Well, I mean, I'm annoying. So if we're going to get on people about being annoying, I don't know if I have anything to. I don't know if I can point fingers. Anyway, Luvagild, pretty good king, conquers a bunch of land, does a bunch of stuff. By the way, tonight we're talking about the Visigoths, who were a group of people that ruled in Spain in the 600s, or 500s and 600s and 700s. You can't ban me. No, you can't actually ban me. Ironically, though, I can ban you, and I can also time you out. And I learned that firsthand. And by the way, if you time someone out, you can't untime them out, even if you have mod powers. So be careful with the timeouts. You can't wait till we get to the Invisigoths. Hey, Kyle. Kyle, I don't think I said hello. Let me make sure that I said hello to everybody. I was very rude when we had friends coming in. Kyle, hello. Good to see you. Did I see Cave Geek pop up? Did I see Cave Geek pop up? No, I didn't see Cave Geek pop up. Oh, he did pop up earlier ago. Hey, Cave. Good to see you, my friend. I didn't give you a shout out. Everybody go follow Cave Geek. He's a cool guy. One of the few people that I've met on Twitch that I feel cool enough to let into my house and sleep in the spare bedroom. Testament to his overall goodness. He would probably argue with me, but, you know, that's what good people tend to do. Oh, we got Nyx. We've got Nyx Lottle in the house, potentially on cell data. We don't know. Nyx is moving right now and is not actively streaming, but within just a little bit, you'll be able to go follow, or you can go follow Nyx Lottle now, and then when Nyx Lottle comes back around to streaming, you can go hang out and watch some really cool art being made. Specifically, well, not specifically, but sometimes including really neat stuff like 2.5D animation stuff, which still kind of blows my mind. Anyway, we've got cool people here. You should go follow all of them and spread the love around. All right. So, Luvagild, doing pretty good. You're not in the sanctity of your own home. You're in my guest bedroom. I don't know how you got in. You do know my address. You do know my address. The only way for you to have gotten in there, though, would have been to walk down the hallway, which is right here. And I would have heard you move down the dog let you in. Also, isn't the guest bedroom in the stream room? No. So the guest bedroom used to be this room, and then we moved everything around. And now, yeah, the dog would have barked her head off as soon as anyone came within. The windows to that room are way off the ground because we're on a downhill slide. And the windows back there are like 6.5, 7 foot off the ground, and they don't open. So you would have had to like crack the windows to get in. And I would have probably heard that. Probably. The master bedroom is on the roof. No, the master bedroom is... the hallway makes like an L shape and comes down this way, but it also goes that way. So if I go right out the door here, there's a restroom, and then like the hall ends right here, and there's a closet, and then behind this wall behind me is the guest bedroom, and then if you go down this branch of the hall that goes that way, the master bedroom is on the other side of the restroom. Don't tell me something can't open. I mean, it can open. It would just be hard to. I need to get on with it. Get on with it. What's up with this stuff? Well, Luvagild, good ruler, does this thing. We've got follows. Dun, 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 dun. Mr. Nubby One is coming in off of a raid by Aristotle. Is that not why you are
Is that
here?
why you are here?
Aristotle. Aristotle pops on early and streams for a hot minute and then gives the raid. Everybody. Bum-ba-dum. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you so much. Let me say these people's names directly, because I want to give credit where credit is due, and I need to sound that last one out, because I don't know if I could just say it off the top of my head. So, Mr. W1, thank you so much for that follow. Welcome to the adventure. E nom nom nom. Thank you so much. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. And Photank. Thank you so much for that follow. You read your bio and you're instantly looking forward to catching the content here. Very nice. Love the Gunpla collection. Have the Master Grade Zaku as well. It took a hot minute. Oh yeah, the Psycho Zaku. This guy. Yeah. That guy was a long project. I do live stream Gunpla builds. I'm currently working on the Master Grade Epion Special Coating, and we've made it this far so far. Look at the shiny. Look at the shiny. So welcome everybody. My name is Shane. If you've never been in, I am a college teacher and I teach history and sociology, and that's what I do in the real world. And then I get on here on Twitch and I talk history stuff because I'm very passionate about history, and I don't think that history has to be boring. I don't think it has to be stuffy and ivory tower and lame. And I think that people would benefit from knowing this kind of stuff, even if it's not, I can't retain all the weird people's names. But if you know the stories and you can use these as examples of, I shouldn't do that because that guy that time did that thing and he screwed it all up and it got him killed. Those are important lessons to learn too. So we have been going through history on Thursday nights, and we started all the way back when history was not even human history, right? Way back when humans weren't even Homo sapiens, and we have chronologically made our way through time. We are currently in the 6th century of the current era, so that's the year 500 to the year 600, and we kind of do things in 100-year chunks, and we do things regionally within those 100-year chunks. So at the moment, we are in the phase, it's like phase 11. So we started all the way over here in Japan, and we did Japan in the 6th century, and then Korea, and then China, and then Southeast Asia, and then Central Asia and India, and then the Persians, and then the Byzantines, and then we did a discussion on the Franks last week, and today we are talking about the Visigoths here in Spain. You have 2 degrees in history, colonial America, and historical administration. Oh, nice. We are going to get along. That sounds great. I quite like colonial America. I'm a generalist, and that makes some of the people that were my teachers very uncomfortable because I study all of history, and I sort of like the idea that history should be taught as a comprehensive thing instead of like finding one little tiny point and zooming in on it. But that doesn't mean that people can't be benefited from finding one little point and zooming in on it. It just means that I don't have a specialty per se. Of course, they made me pick stuff when I was doing my master's, and you got to pick a topic. And so I did Roman Imperial stuff, but I study everything. I kind of joke that I've never met a history that I don't love. So colonial history is really interesting stuff. I especially appreciate the appropriateness of understanding how colonial America actually functioned in discussions of how we as modern Americans view things like the Constitution or things like ideology. And of course, colonial America has been under a hot button magnifying glass since stuff like the 1619 Project came out, and then the rebuttal by the 1776 Project and all of that stuff, which I've read. Yeah, absolutely. All of this stuff is in my wheelhouse, and I'd be happy to blah about any of that stuff. So welcome in, everybody, and I hope that you are already coming in a way that is comfortable enough to participate at whatever level you feel most comfortable. We do have a lot of great people here. You're welcome to ask questions. Doesn't matter if it pertains to what we're going through. Doesn't matter if it's a tangent or off topic. If you have something that's pressing or even something that's interesting, go. There's a 1776 project. Yeah, Aristotle. So when the 1619 project was published, it of course created a big stir. For those of you that are unfamiliar, the 1619 project was a group of historians and sociologists and legal scholars that wrote a series of essays that were mostly published in the New Yorker that attempted to sort of shine light on the fact that the legal system of America had been more or less racist going all the way back to 1619, which is the date that the first African slaves were sold in the colony at that point of Virginia. And this, of course, is going to reintroduce a lot of ideas that had been around since the late 70s and early 80s, which, of course, today we argue about critical race theory. Critical race theory is not what most people think it is, because most people don't actually know what it is that are arguing about it on television or in Congress or in various state-level governments. But basically, the idea here is that when looking at the American legal system, one of the things that we have to do is be aware that many of the laws that exist today are still sometimes directly, but other times sort of descended from laws that were very basically designed to segregate populations of people. And that had racial overtones, and it was very clear in the context of the law itself. And as a rebuttal to that, many people felt like the 1619 Project was criticizing America and calling it a bad place. And, you know, there's the argument that, you know, we shouldn't talk bad about the place, It's okay to admit that things have been wrong in the past, and it's also okay to admit that we need to fix some of them today. The big issue is that a lot of people that did not like the 1619 Project don't like the fact that they are first time perhaps coming to terms with the idea that they might have some sort of racial privilege by being notably white, notably male in America. So especially under the sort of guise of President Trump, there was a rebuttal project put together that was called the 1776 Project that sought to basically undo any perceived damage of the 1619 Project by pushing a rather opposing narrative of American exclusionary systems and American exceptionalism. So there you go. One could argue that colonialism is still happening. It depends on what type of colonialism you're talking about. If you're talking about cultural, like cultural imperialism or stuff like that, absolutely. I feel like colonialism as a term has unfortunately been sort of turned into a buzzword that a lot of people use without thinking it all the way through. And unfortunately, the word colonialism has been boiled down to basically meaning, well, not to everybody, but to some people, especially people that are very vocal on Twitter, colonialism has unfortunately turned into meaning anything that is done by white people, which is unfortunate. Can I explain critical race theory? Photink, I did a bit, but I can sort of give a larger issue here. So the original people that were involved in the creation of critical race theory were legal scholars and law students back in the late 70s and early 80s. And one of the things that they were specifically doing was studying the history of American law. And they were looking specifically at laws that had been written to literally create different levels of experience. So stuff that would say, for example, the child of a slave is a slave. Well, enslaved people in America at that point were either Native Americans or black people, and white people could not be slaves by law. So there was a law that distinguished between indentured servanthood, which is what European white people that were coming to America got to be called, and slave, which was something that they called non-white people. And at that point, this creates a sort of bifurcation in legal history, and laws that come after that, after this ideology that you can legalize the concept that certain people are not as good as other people. You have even stuff like, what's in the Constitution. If you look at the original draft of the Constitution states that slaves are only 3/5 of a person when counting towards population, right? So critical race theory looks at the legal history of America and says specifically that we need to be aware of how these racial and social ideas permeated the legal system that was in America, right? So we had legalized slavery for decades. Then we had segregation for decades. Then we had, even redlining that lasted in some places all the way up through the 1980s. So critical race theory suggests that we should take a critical eye at looking at the legal system of America to find out if there are racial undertones or overtones in specific laws. And that's really all critical race theory says. It has turned into this entire firestorm of other things. But that's where it comes from. The F1 is way better than NASCAR. Ha ha ha. So I hope that answers your question. I know that was a bit long-winded, but I think that was a good answer, a good chance to explain some of that stuff. All right. So let's get back to the Visigoths. If you have any follow-up questions, you're welcome to throw those out there too. I'd be happy to talk. So, Liuvigild beats up a bunch of people, makes his kingdom bigger, and decides that one of the things that he's going to try to do to keep the kingdom from kind of falling apart when he dies is that he's going to go ahead and appoint his sons as high-level positions and give them some kind of experience in ruling, right? You got to get some stuff on the resume if you are the prince, right? And just to say that you did it. Get on with it. Sounds good. So he's got 2 sons, and he's going to appoint them both as dukes. And he gives them kind of a little territory, and is this kind of under you. You get to do some administrative stuff. You get to do some, politicking and some rubbing of the shoulders and all of that fun stuff, right? And this is not going to go as well as he had hoped. His son's eldest one is called Hermenegild, and the younger is named Recared. So we've got King Liuvigild, and his eldest son Hermenegild, and then his younger son Recared. Well, I can show you. Oops, sorry. Here we go. This guy down here is Hermenegild. Hermegildus Rex. Because everything's got to be written in weird German. This would not be modern German. This is like probably old German. And I'm not trying to say that German is a weird language, but if you're writing an ancient document, you're probably going to write it in your native language of the time or Latin. German's actually a pretty fun language. I wish I knew more of it. I can parse it, but I can't speak very much of it. Anyway, so here's Hermenegild, and this guy, if you can get anything out of that, is Recared. I don't know if this is necessarily the best image of him. It looks almost a little bit like he's Big Bird. Big Bird skeleton. I don't know, man. That's just a freaky looking... Yeah, what a smile. Anyway, it's what we got, right? We don't all have great portraits of these folks. So, what goes on? Well, Hermenegild decides that he's going to marry outside of Spain. and he marries a Frankish noble lady. And what's important about this is that she was a good Catholic, and the kings and nobility of the Visigoths were all Arians. Remember that they don't agree on the nature of Jesus, and that's kind of a big deal because that's kind of like the central part of, Christianity. Yeah, le gasp. Too much design for a coin, your nephew can't do it for free. But he'll get exposure. Just remember, like, everybody will get to see this coin, and they'll go, who did that coin? And you'll be able to say it's your nephew. So he's going to have lots of people asking for him, right? That's got to be worth something. I'm just picking, by the way. Pay your artists. Artists are people that are incredibly talented and skilled and deserve to be properly remunerated for their skill. Don't try to pay somebody an exposure. That's hot garbage. Yeah, pearls clutched. Oh my gosh, he married a good old Roman Christian. And to perhaps make it better / worse, depending on your viewpoint, Hermenegild converts to Catholicism. And this is where things go, shall we say, awry. Because the Pope at the time is this guy named Pope Gregory. And if you know anything about Pope Gregory, you'll probably know that he's also kind of a political player. And he starts encouraging Hermenegild to try to take over. Like, hey, you're going to be king one day. You should maybe tell your dad that he should convert to the good Catholic faith. And Hermenegild's like, I'm going to rebel. And he's like, I didn't quite say that, but if you win, I'm totally going to back you. And your artist probably had more followers than you, influencer. Oh, alas. So Hermenegild rebels. And he's got this crazy idea that all of the people, right, all of the common people are going to flock to his banner because he's a good Christian now. He's a good Catholic. And he thinks that this is going to give him some sort of like protection and give him a big group of supporters and hopefully a big enough army to outlast this stuff. But what ends up happening is that his dad, Luvigild, teams up with his younger brother, Ricarid, and they beat the mess out of Hermenegild's rebellion, and they put him in jail. Now, they sort of try to make amends, and they try to build the bridge back, and it doesn't go so great. And what ends up happening is that Hermenegild actually ends up getting exiled. He gets kicked out. And along the way, the location of his exilic prison gets kind of leaked to the general populace, and somebody goes and chops his head off with an axe. Now, yeah, oh, my sweet summer child, right? Getting your head chopped off with an axe is usually not a good end. But what's interesting that happens to Hermenegild is when he dies, Gregory, the Pope, tries to turn him into a rallying cry. He tries to get this guy turned into, I think it's just assassin, not assassination. So he tries to get this guy turned into a martyr. And he tries to use this as a call for all good Catholics in Spain to rise up and take over and do all of the good things. And most people are like, he rebelled against the rightful king, right? And Gregory's like, but he was a good Christian and he was rebelling against Arians. And all of the other kings were like, you understand that I will never support someone rebelling against a rightful king, right? You're never going to convince me to support a rebel who rebelled against a rightful king. You're not going to win me on this one, Greg. But what's really funny is that about 800 years later, all of Gregory's hagiography of this guy ends up hitting the right desk, and Hermenegild is now Saint Hermenegild, because he was canonized as a saint for all of his good work, and is shown carrying the instrument of his assassination. So he's usually pictured with a big axe. Hard to get riled up when all you listen to is Gregorian chant. Well, maybe. Anyway, so Hermenegild is gone. Leovigild lives a long life, but does die eventually, because that's what happens to everybody. And we end up with King Recared. Now, this guy has seen what happens when all of this stuff goes down. All right, he's watched his brother rebel. He's watched his brother get killed. He's watched his dad do all of this stuff. Remember, kids, political rebellion will get you into heaven. Ooh, I don't endorse that. Don't. Wow. Yeah, I guess that's been told to many, many people across the ages, though, right? Okay, so what's up with Recared? Well, first off, he does something pretty drastic. And this pretty drastic thing is that he converts to good old Catholic Christianity himself. And this is really big. This is really, really big. Because this is sort of like the last sizable holdout in Europe of non-Catholic Christianity. There were other smaller barbarian groups that weren't Catholic yet, but in the western part of Europe and northern Africa, the Visigoths were the last Arian holdouts. And it's really important for the political power of Rome, specifically the papal authority here, that everybody lines up behind the West. And I'm seriously considering next time we come around in the 600 to 700 block of doing a stream specifically on why this is such a big deal. The popes become powerful figures for a reason, and it's not something that happens by accident. They sort of angle for this. And fitting the Visigothic kingdom into the larger patchwork of kings that answer to them is like the linchpin that holds the rest of it together. Like, now we're mostly there. And this is not going to go over very well inside of his territory. When he converts, there is a lot of issues. There are rebellions. Some of his own nobility who were Arian rebel and cause a lot of damage. He has to fight for almost a decade to bring his own country more or less back under control when he converts, because a lot of people that were in the Gothic nobility are really upset by this because they had been Arian for 100 plus years, right? The popes became the new emperors. Inserts Holy Roman Empire joke here. We're working towards that, right? We're going in a direction that ends up there, right? The popes do end up kind of becoming a new emperor, but we'll talk about that maybe next time. We'll see. But culturally speaking, this decision also has a lot of impacts. So the Arian church at the time that was being run in Spain was using the original Gothic language as its language of the church. So you would go to a church service and they would be doing this in the original Gothic language. So when they switch away from Arian Christianity to like proper Catholicism, this is going to basically, it's not going to kill the Gothic language, but this is going to have really big ramifications in the use of Gothic languages in Spain and their culture. Because when Catholic culture becomes the norm, this is going to affect things like your weddings, your funerals, your holy service days, your church events, all the stuff that we might consider holidays today were at one point probably linked to religious activity. So this is going to be one of the things that starts the sort of larger integration of the Gothic people into sort of a larger Catholic Europe in the West, right? He asked leadingly, right? Yeah, the Popo, right? This is also going to have a lot of political ramifications with the Pope being in the picture. You're going to have to do what the Pope says now. If the Pope says that you're king, you're king. What happens if the Pope doesn't say that you're king? Are you then king? There's a lot of that that's going to start happening. But also, what about the people that don't want to be Catholic? Well, that's a good question. It's pretty clear that he starts persecuting Arians. So if you don't want to convert to good old-fashioned sort of like Nicene Christianity, you are now walking around with a target on your back. There's some debate on whether or not he forced Jewish people to convert. Some historians say yes, other historians say no. There's a pretty good case, I think, this is just me saying so, there's a pretty good case, I think, that he probably did not actively persecute Jewish people based on some of the laws, stuff that he passed, but it's pretty clear that there was a social expectation, right? So there wasn't necessarily a law that the king was putting into effect that said you can target Jewish people, but when the king switches and says this is the way that everybody should be, that has a social effect, and that does have an effect on the way that people live within your kingdom. So there were probably, I would expect there to be, I should say it that way, I would expect there to be social ramifications for being openly Jewish at that point, right? Where on the map are the Visigoth territory? That's a great question. I have an answer. Boom, here we go. So the yellow area right here by the year 600 is what we have under the control of Recared. So up here we have the Frankish territories. Down here we have the little bit of Spain that Rome still controlled. And we still have that little kind of Basque country, the Cantabrians up here that are being a little bit independent-minded, as they usually are, by the way. So again, they have Septimania, and they have taken this region up here. This used to be that kingdom of Swabia that I was referring to earlier in the stream. So that had been completely brought into the sort of larger Visigothic fold by Recared's father, Luvigild. So pretty big chunk of territory, not as big as it used to be, right? They had lost, of course, a lot of this territory up here and this territory here, but it's not nothing. And what's important is that it's stable. Another thing that Recared is going to end up doing is starts changing the laws. We mentioned earlier under Alaric II that there had been a legal code where Goths were treated differently than Romans. So the native people had a different law code than the Goths. Recared's going to do away with that. He's going to say, we're all going to get the same law code. Specifically, he got rid of a law that banned marrying between Roman people and Gothic people. So there's going to be a lot more homogenizing going on here, if you will. And this is going to go over pretty well for Recared. He does seem to be really kind of all in on the Christian thing. What is the etymology of Septimania? Did they really just like the number 7? So the 7th portion, it goes back to the expansion of Rome way back in the Roman period. so if let me switch back over to this map. Like if we look over here, Italy sort of has natural boundaries. And when Rome was expanding, okay, cool. Now, this area right here in France was actually called Provence because it was like outside Italy. So they called it Provence. And, Septimania, the 7th edition, it's a weird nomenclature that the Romans had where they kind of, they're sometimes they're really good at naming things, and other times they're just like, 7th? Okay, cool. It's like, British people naming islands. Sometimes it's like, this great thing, and other times it's just like Flat Island or Midway Island. Like, what'd you call it that? It's halfway.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
JMR, what's up, my friend? Good to see you. It's been a little bit. You love everything about this channel. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that you do. It's been a good one. JMR, how are you? I haven't seen you streaming for the last couple of weeks, but I will also admit I've been out of town for last weekend. So if you don't already follow my friend JMR Killer, you got to. He's a good guy. He streams video games, and he also has started building both Lego kits and model kits on usually Sunday nights. But you got to go give this guy a follow. He's a good dude, and you have a good time. I'm doing okay. A little bit of a time crunch tonight. I've got to travel a little bit tonight and get to some places to do stuff in the morning, but I started a little bit early to offset that, so things are going pretty good otherwise. Busier than I thought that I would be during the summer, but it always ends up. Taking a little hiatus. Okay, that's cool. Well, everybody go give him a follow anyway. When he makes the triumphant return, you'll be there. You don't want to miss out on that, do you? So yeah, we're actually kind of just wrapping up right now. So Ricard does really well with this Christianity thing. He impresses the Pope. The Pope ends up sending a whole bunch of relics to Spain. There's a fragment of the True Cross. I think there's like somebody's hair. One of the disciples' hair. And I think there's a link of the chain that held St. Peter or something like that. Anyway, just a whole bunch of relics as a way to show thanks for converting. Ricard builds a whole bunch of churches and monasteries. He gives back a lot of land that had been confiscated by his father. He's just he appears to be legit in his conversion. So, make the Catholic Bibles in orange. The orange Catholic Bible. I know what you're talking about. There. I've heard that that's good in sandy situations, right? But that is all for me tonight. I do have one quick thing that I wanted to promote because it's important to me because I enjoyed the devil out of it. And I've got some other stuff that I'll show next time that I stream, kind of as a way to promote some of the stuff that I ran into when I was at Heroes Con. Oh, Lumpy, I didn't give you a shout out. Holy crap, I don't even think I said hello, Lumpy. My bad, man. I'm losing my mind. My friend Lumpy Dragon Potato is a great guy, and he does Minecraft streaming. And is building a new kingdom from scratch. And it's amazing stuff to watch. And he just got a big computer upgrade, and it looks freaking amazing. Like, high definition Minecraft is something that I didn't think was a thing until I saw it. And now I'm just kind of like, that's really pretty. Go give Lumpy a follow. He's a good guy. And he's a smart guy, too. and has good conversation. All right, so one of the things that I ran into when I was at Heroes, I mentioned Middle Age earlier from Steve Conley, but I want to talk about this guy. So this is Theseus, and it is by an artist, illustrator, and writer named Jordan Holt. His website is Carthage Project. Let me see if I can get his card here to show up. He gave me his personal email address because I talked to him forever, but I want to make sure that I give him a shout out. Maybe if I get all of it in the picture. Anyway, carthageproject.com. Go check out carthageproject.com. So Theseus is the titular character here, and if you know Theseus, he's the Greek hero. Did he send out replacement pages so often? I think so. But the story here is sort of Theseus as a young lad coming into how he becomes a hero. And it was a great thing. So the gods are involved. The blue guy here is Zeus. The young lady here is Artemis. Anyway, this is great. I read this as soon as I picked it up, and it made me laugh out loud, which is something that is okay to do, but it's really, really funny. It's really good. I like it. You should look up Jordan Holt, the book Theseus, and you should give this guy some love. If you like my style of humor, you will appreciate this book. And if you know the Greek stuff, the Greek historical stuff and mythological stuff, that's great. If you don't know the Greek stuff or the mythological stuff, don't worry about it. You'll still be able to get the jokes. So it's good stuff. And I give it 2 thumbs up. He's a sort of a new comic writer and artist. He's working on book 2, and book 2 is supposed to have a Kickstarter that is going to be running later this year. So it's really good. Also, again, go get Steve Conley's stuff and go get David's stuff. And there's so many people that have good things. Find a giant stack of money and then spend it on all of the beautiful things that exist in the world. That's kind of the goal for everybody, right? All right, so I do need to kind of scoot down the road, so let's go see who's around that I could do a little bit of a raid on. We have several people to stream, to raid. Just because it's an easy one and we haven't done it in a little bit, let's go raid Kirk Shannon. If you don't know Kirk Shannon, hang around. He's an amazing artist doing pen stuff, pen and ink with lots of really kind of spooky design. He's a really great guy. He has a really great channel. You will enjoy your time hanging out there. I always enjoy my time hanging out there. So we're going to go raid Kirk, and then I'm going to very quickly spend a little bit of time with my wife, and then I'm going to get in the car and drive south so that I can get ready for the morning. I have not finished Epion. You're going to abuse rank 3 things next Thursday, but you'll give the question now because you know it's a tough one. Oh, goodness. Quickly then, or maybe put it on Discord, because I'm about to hit the raid button. Top 3 albums of the 21st century. That's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to give me things, and I'm going to rank those. Not how it's supposed to work. Anyway, thank you all for hanging out. Welcome to all the new follows, and thanks everybody for the raids and the subs. You're great people. I will see you again next week. But